Hello and welcome to a very special conversation with the remarkable voice behind many of Manfred Mann's Earth Band's biggest and most iconic hits. Co-writer of the anthem You're the Voice and an incredible performer whose work has spanned decades. Today we'll look back on his rich history in music and explore his newest and final live album, The Final Round, which brilliantly captures the energy he's brought to stages around the world. Welcome to VRP Rocks, Chris
Well,
Thompson.
thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to speak with you, Chris. It really is. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Now, let's start at the very beginning. We've got a lot to get through, obviously, but you were born in England, but you spent your early life growing up in New Zealand, didn't you? Before,
Yeah.
again, returning to England to pursue music. So what made that move happen? What made you cross the entire world just to come back and do music again in the UK?
Um, my father immigrated to New Zealand, so that's why I was there. And it's a pretty nice place to grow up.
I can
So I
imagine.
grew up, I had a little bit of time between 9 and 12 where I came back to England and then back to New Zealand again because it's just a good place to grow up. So, and then, I got interested in music. My father was a musician. I got interested in music and I had a wonderful school teacher called Barry Fell who kind of let the band use the music room in the weekends, which was fantastic. And I just kind of grew up listening and playing music. And then after being with many bands in New Zealand, many kind of connotations of the same musicians, because I lived in a small place called Hamilton. And I just met a few people from overseas and I got a lot of encouragement to pack up my suitcase and move back. So that's what I did.
Wow. And you mentioned your father being a musician. What did he play? And was he in bands and things like that as well?
Well, no, no, no. He was a school teacher. He played piano, taught music, and he played trombone and piano and played lots of records. I grew up listening to all kind of stuff. Unfortunately, he died when I was about 8 years old. So my memory of him is, kept alive by the music that he played us.
Oh, incredibly sad. So you came back to the UK. What was your first kind of musical offerings at that point then? What were the early bands you're in when you first came back to the UK?
Well, a guy called Trevor Morace, who was in a band called the Peddlers, um, he sent me a telegram saying, well, he played with us a little bit in New Zealand because our drummer dropped out and he was just there holidaying. So he played with us for a while and he sent me this telegram saying, got a gig, come and play. And so I packed up my bag and went and played. Now, a gig to me was like 7 nights a week in a club, playing
Okay.
covers. And that's what I'd done the whole of, we did some original as well, but basically that's what it was. The earning money situation was playing covers in a nightclub. So when he said, come, we've got a gig. I mean, he had played with us for 6 months, so he knew what we were doing. Anyway, when I got here, I stayed with Trevor, and he had a rehearsal studio in a place called Little Chalfont. And yeah, I said, Trevor, when's this gig? He said, it's next Wednesday. We're playing at a university in up north somewhere. Well, that's it? Yeah, that's it. It's a band called Sun Treader, but you're going to play guitar that night because our proper guitar player is not away or some unbelievable. So, he's a lovely guy, Trevor, and he was great. He got me over. And then I kind of answered ads and played in some Irish bands, actually. I played in some Irish country bands in just pubs in Cricklewood and where I was living. And yeah, just found work where we could. I answered some ads in the Melody Maker, joined a rehearsal band that was rehearsing with two other singers, and just to go and try and get a deal somewhere. So I played with them. We didn't have a name really. That was really what I was doing. I was just answering ads in the Melody Maker, and I didn't even get gigs that I didn't even want when I went, like going to do, you know, ballroom things or holiday camps or whatever. So, and one of the ads was well, first one was Argent. I didn't get that. And then Manfred Mann's Earth Band. So it was just a cycle of answering and going down and trying to keep myself in shape. And And then luckily, I started working with Manfred after about, I don't know, after about 3 months and a whole bunch of auditions and traveling from North London to South London to rehearse with the band and just sit with him around a piano and play and sing. And I finally said to him one day, I said, Manfred, am I in the band or am I just kind of helping you work with some songs and stuff? He said, oh, all right, then you could be in the band, £30 a week. Is that okay? I said, yeah, okay, fine. And that was basically it, really.
Incredible stuff. Let's just cycle quickly back to Argent because obviously they're a big name. I've spoke to Rod as well and Russ Ballard and things like that. So what do you remember of the audition for that? You said you didn't get it. So what do you remember of the audition for
I
Argent?
remember it. It's indelibly printed on my brain. I was told to be at CBS Studios 7:30. So I got there at 7:30 and waited around about 8 o'clock. Some guy came out and said, oh, can you go through there into the studio? So I walked into the studio. There was nobody there. I looked around. There was a microphone in the middle of the room, headphones on the floor, and I looked up and there was the Argent guys were standing in the control room, and I heard this voice say, pick up the bottle, pick up the headphones. So I picked up the headphones and put the headphones on and it went one, two, three, four. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. Hold your head up, it was like that. And I was so taken aback by no contact at
Mm.
all, anything. I missed the first line of the first verse. I missed it. So then I was kind of like, completely spaced. I did that, and then we did another song, and then they said, "Thanks very much. That's it. We'll let you know." And I went back out, and I got a phone call about 3 days later from the management, and this is word for word what he said to me. He said, "Hi, Chris. Listen, you were by far the best singer, but we've already got one fat guy in the band, so I'm sorry we have to get somebody else." Because I was quite heavy. I was like 13 stone or something like that. Word for word, that's what it was.
Wow, that's crazy.
So I went out, lost a lot of weight, and then did the Man for Man's.
That's astonishing that you went and auditioned for Argent and you never actually spoke to anybody in the band other than
No,
listening to
never.
instructions through the
No,
headphones.
no.
Wow, that's incredible. So Manfred, obviously you've joined. You're getting your £30 a week. You must feel like a rock star at this stage. I mean, were you aware of the Earth Band before you went and
Yes,
auditioned for them?
yes, I did because they had just had a hit with Joybringer,
Yes.
and I'd been listening to the radio, so I kind of yeah, I knew, and I was a Manfred Mann big fan with Paul Jones. I mean, he
Yeah.
was, my idol for a very long time when I was in New Zealand. They came to New Zealand. I went to see them. I thought he was amazing, standing there like this, looking with contempt at the audience. He was great. He was great. Great harmonica player. And the band were good. They were really, really good. Mike Huggan and Mr. Vickers and Manfred, of course. And yeah, so I was a big fan. So I knew how they'd gone. I knew they'd come up through chapter three, which was the jazzy kind of
Yep.
thing, which I didn't like. And then I heard Joybring and I thought, oh, fantastic. Because Mick
Incredible
Rogers
stuff.
got a great voice, really great voice. And so, but he wanted to leave. That was why they asked, because he was a singing guitar player, much better guitar player than I was. So I didn't get the gig on my guitar playing, that's for sure. They got another guitar player as well. So yeah, I got it on my singing. So yeah, I did. I felt pretty, yeah, I felt very happy to be working with Manfred because he's a very interesting guy, very difficult in some ways and very easy in other ways. And he kind of liked me because I could sing anything. I grew up through the club singing anything. So he said to me, "Or try and sing it like this," or "How about a bit of that?" or "Can we do it higher up? Can we do it lower down?" That kind of stuff. "Can you double it? Can you do it in octaves?" All that kind of stuff that Manfred is well known for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I
Obviously.
enjoyed it, and I did feel very happy about having a gig. That was for sure. A regular income.
That's it, definitely. And as you mentioned, there, obviously Manfred was a big star. He'd obviously had big hits in the '60s, and then the Earth Band with Joybringer was a big hit, and obviously they're in the spotlight and things like that. So, what was the biggest challenge that you faced then when you joined the band? It was obviously well known at this point.
Well, I think the biggest challenge I faced was actually the amount of time they rehearsed and how much they changed the things as it went along. We rehearsed four songs for God knows, I don't know, 6 months or something like that, every day, Monday to Friday. And I'd been used to Tuesdays rehearsals, learning six songs and the floor show, So going over and over the stuff and Chris Slade, bless his heart, would come in on the next Monday and he'd say, "Was I playing dum 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 or was I playing dum 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 dum?" You know, we weren't recording anything, which was so stupid. And then we would start it all again, and that didn't feel good. And Manfred was always searching for the vibe for the song. So anyway, we finally got it. Then we went into the studio to actually record, and he just didn't like anything. So we had to change everything again, and I found that pretty difficult to deal with. You know, he was right. He'd had so many hits and knew how things worked and didn't work. And I was just this guy from New Zealand who'd made one record in his entire life. So I just had to stick with it. You know what I mean? Which I think I did. But that was the difficulty, really, was the kind of rehearsals for me were always vibey and fun, and everybody was, how about this, do this. Then we'd play the song a couple of times next, and rehearsals were really dour events, just all day long crashing away with these four songs. It's just that was the hardest thing for me to deal with.
That's interesting then, because we're leading on to what became the defining track for the band, Blinded by the Light, of course. What do you
Yeah.
remember about recording that? Was that a difficult one? Because obviously it's an interpretation of a Springsteen track. So what do you remember about how that one came together?
Well, that was one of the songs that I was rehearsing with Manfred round the piano, and to be honest, I hadn't heard Springsteen's version, and I didn't hear it until I don't know, a year later or something, I think. And I don't know why I didn't, not because of anything, but just I was with the piano and Manfred saying, this is how it goes. He'd write out the lyric and then he'd go like that. And I had to interpret that as with these things, and which I tried very hard to do my very best. And I think Manfred liked me because I would try all sorts of different things that he came up with, but it was a very exhausting trial to be recording it because we had it worked out and we went into the studio and as I said, nothing worked. He didn't like anything, so we had to try all sorts of different things. And lucky we had an engineer called Laurie Latham who was really a very, very creative, intelligent guy who managed to keep Manfred in the box. Right, he was going to throw it out at one point because it wasn't right.
Oh, wow.
You know, and then we got it right where we thought it was good. We had two or three songs, and Jerry Bron from Bronze Records came down to listen to it. And he hated everything, stormed out of the studio. And I thought, that's it. My 30 pounds is gone. We're not going I'm not going to give you the next lot of the advance. I'm not going to do this rubbish, you know. And, but that actually made Manfred go back in and come up with the little chopsticks thing that started the whole thing
Yeah.
off. Because before it was originally a whole bunch of cellos going, which were in fact boring, I must admit. So he came up with that, and we recorded it. We had to crossfade with two different machines. If you listen closely, you can hear how one machine just kind of catches up with the other machine just to do that crossfade that eventually was probably the thing that made it successful. So yeah, it was a difficult song, but difficult song to do.
Incredible. And you've gone from, as you said, you'd only recorded one record up to that point. You then on your princely sum of £30 a week, and you're having the struggles of recording this and people not liking it, and then finally getting how you wanted it, and then it became an absolute global phenomenon and still is to this day. I mean, how did it feel at the time seeing how big it went?
Well, it was wonderful, of course. It was amazing. But up until that point, I have to admit, when I heard it on the radio, I didn't like it at all.
Oh,
We were touring in America and it was coming out. And I remember one time we were sitting in a limousine. I just didn't think the drums sounded right. And I just didn't think, and the vocals were weird. And there was something happened with the azimuth when we were recording. So it sounded like douche instead of deuce, and all these little things that I would hear all the time because I'd listened to it for a year and a half, or not quite, three-quarters of a year. And so I didn't like it when I first heard it. And we were going to the record company sent us to America to do 50 stations in about 3 weeks to explain that it wasn't douche and that it was deuce, because it wasn't being played because,
wow.
that douche song, what do we want to play on the radio? Anyway, so we sent us to that. We were sitting in a car with Don Henley and Glenn Fry in a limousine going to a radio station. And they played the Eagles thing. And of course, sounded fantastic as the Eagles stuff always do. And then they said, now coming to the studios, Manfred Mann's Earth Band with their new single, excuse me, Blinded by the Light. And it came on and everything. And I was just going, oh, God. And then Don Henley said, man, you guys, how do you get that great English snare drum sound? Our snare drums are so big and they take up so much room. How do you do that? From then on, it sounded pretty good to me after that. And of course, as it went up the charts, it sounded better and better. I mean, that's the way ears are with people that listen all the time. And when it got to number one, it was just like the most incredible thing that had happened to me. It was just a fantastic, little boy from Hamilton, finally number one in America, first record out really. So it's been downhill ever since. No.
Not at all, not at all. And we'll get to some more uphills soon with more successes. But in terms of that hit itself, I mean, it was such a big song. So how does that affect the band when you go into the studio to record the follow-up album then?
Yeah, well, that was our problem, really, because we didn't have songwriters in the band. We were looking for songs, and that was indeed the problem for us going to make it the second record. I mean, I think it's bad enough if you are the writers and you have to make the second record after a big hit. And the record company said, why don't you do another Bruce Springsteen song? And, which we did. We did For You, I think. But then Manfred had been playing with this song from the band. Well, it wasn't from the band. It was from Robbie Robinson and John Simon, the two guys from the band, the band. And he'd been playing this all the time. And when we were on the road, he'd find a piano in the lobby and he'd be crashing away playing this and playing Was Davies on the Road Again. And it got changed into a shuffle. And that was the kind of iconic track for Europe. It didn't really happen in America. And, we got dropped by Warner. So making the second record as it happened kept the building up in Europe, because I don't know whether Blinded did get to number one in England. I'm not sure, but Davies on the Road Again definitely did, and then Angel Station after that was the most successful Manfred Mann's Earth Band record in Europe, and so in that we kind of we didn't try to alienate America, but we didn't have the song.
So interesting the way you talk about the way that the Manfred takes songs and changes them. And obviously, as you said, he's like the master of reinterpreting tracks, isn't he? So
Absolutely.
how does he do it then? Obviously, you've been at close quarters seeing him do it. So how does he what goes through his head when he's thinking about songs? And do you listen to the originals and then think of how you can change it, or is it just something that naturally he comes up with?
Well, he's got a list of songs. He's probably still got the list and still trying to work on some of them. And I think it was helpful for him to have me to bash around the piano and just kind of sing, because I didn't mind. I didn't mind what we sang, how it was. It could be different tomorrow. But, he believes in a song. That's what he really believes in a song. And he'll keep going until He's got it to where he really believes in it. And but now, because he doesn't have a band, he still believes in songs, still trying to do the same songs he was doing 6 or 8 or 10 years ago. But in the time when we had the band, we were able to rein in you know, the Manfred, go anywhere, try anything. We were able to actually say, come on, we've got to make this record and force him in some way to do it. But he's very clever with that kind of arrangement stuff. He's very good. And he'll keep going till he gets it right in his own head.
Yes, absolutely incredible. After that record, we talked about obviously you left, and then Chris left, and Dave left as well. I mean, what was the decision behind that? Was it just the fact that things were coming down after America, or what was it? What happened at that time?
Well, you'd be talking about Angel Station then, because it was the same band. Although it's hard for me to remember. I think Pat King came on bass, maybe for some of the um, Watch record. But really, it was, I don't know. I don't know why bands break up, really. They stop appreciating each other, I think, is what happens. And, Chris, everybody has a different view of where the band should be going. That's why Mick left in the first place. Everybody has the vision of it. And I was, I was lucky enough to kind of hang out with Manfred, although I left and returned many, many times. Angel Station was the last, because I wanted to go and do my own thing. So Angel Station was the last official, it says on the record, this will be Chris Thompson's last record, but it wasn't, because I made, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 after that. Because Manfred always ring me up and say, can you just come in and try this one song for me? And I would say, yeah, fine. I mean, I loved working with Manfred. I mean, he used to drive me mad, but it also, I learned a great deal from him.
It
And
sounds like
so
I
I
was going to say,
come
it
and
sounds like
sing
you
one.
bring the best out of each other as well, the way you two worked.
Yeah, maybe. But he couldn't find anyone else to fill my shoes. And so I came and did lots of things. And we did Somewhere in Africa, which I really loved. I loved doing that. And the tour, that was the best tour we did, was Somewhere in Africa, when Mick Rogers came back into the
Yeah,
band and played. And then it was three singers, because we had Noel McKellar as well. And that was the best connotation of the band, I think. I mean, the band that went to America on Blinded by Light with Chris and Colin and myself and Dave, I don't think it was the greatest band. I don't think it was the greatest band. I think we were still trying to find a way to really play together and harness Manfred and Chris and Colin, and like they did with the early band. I think people who saw the band before I joined and everything, when it was very avant-garde, proggy, rocky, I think those people were upset that it went to the mainstream. Whereas the mainstream place where we were playing, I think they thought, yeah, the band was great. And but we didn't really have enough songs. I mean, we went to America without enough songs. Yeah. But it worked okay. I mean, we did very well on the gigs. We always did well. The audience loved us, always. And we did Mighty Quinn again, which, that was, you know, you can't stop tapping your foot or singing when you do Mighty Quinn.
absolutely, absolutely. Right, let's move away from Earthband then, because you've got an awful lot of other things to talk about as well. And let's start with Night. I think was that an LA band? Did you move to LA to form that group?
Well, we formed it in England and moved to LA because
Okay.
we were signed to Richard Perry, who unfortunately just died. And he was produced the record, didn't. But again, there was not really great songwriters. The band was a good band.
Yeah.
So we went there to record, and Richard, he couldn't make up his mind. We had two singers, and it worked fantastically well live because we worked covers into having two singers singing,
Mhm.
a girl and a guy. And so Richard heard the demos and could get what the band was about. It was about two very strong singers. And so we went over there, and again, we didn't have we didn't have the songs. Richard had a lot of songwriters, so we worked with a lot of songwriters. And when you do that, it's very difficult to have a general view of what you want to do. You know, we didn't have a core of two or three, and I wasn't good enough writing at that point in time, I don't think. And I had had no experience, so I was trying to write and write with other artists,
Mhm.
but we didn't have an overview, except that there was two very strong singers, and we weren't able to capture that particularly. And so even though we made the first record, had Hot Summer Nights as a hit, again, we didn't have, anything else to follow that up with, really. It was, it was sad. And I thought Richard, I believed Richard would find a way to do it because he was a great songs person. Couldn't find a way to get the identity of the two singers. But a lot of people bought the first record, and a lot of people still love the record and like the band, still talk to me about it. So it can't have been that bad, I suppose.
No, and as you said, you had the hits over in America as well from that first record. I think it was If You Remember Me as well, was a hit as well, wasn't it?
That's right. Well, that really, because Hot Summer Nights was with Stevie singing,
Yeah.
and I was kind of doing the some bits and pieces as well. And If You Remember Me was just me. So it was hard for the radio stations. And in those days, the American radio stations were very stuck with their format. And so, we came with Night doing, a shuffle, an LA kind of shuffle, Fleetwood Macish kind of thing, if which did very well, got into the top 10, I think. And then I came with If You Remember Me, which was just like a soft rock ballad. And yeah, it was difficult for the radio stations to identify or for
Mhm.
audiences to identify. But we went out on the road with the Doobie Brothers for 9 months, which was absolutely fantastic. And we won over their audiences when we played, which was, they liked us and they looked after us. And that was a fantastic experience.
Sounds like a fantastic experience. And let's move on
Was.
to something else then. I mean, you were famously involved with Jeff Wayne's War of the World with Thunderchild. I mean, how did that project come about? How were you invited into that? And what was it like being part of what became, and again, another groundbreaking kind of moment in rock?
Well, that was fantastic, of course. Um, the lyric writer on that was a guy called Gary Osborne, and Jeff also had a jingles company who did advertisements and stuff, and I worked with Gary doing some stuff for him as well, some jingle singing and everything. And so he asked Jeff, he suggested for a couple of the jingles that Jeff was doing. He said, "Why don't you ask Chris?" So I went and worked with Jeff, and we did two or three very successful jingles together. And so when the War of the Worlds thing came up, I think they got Justin Hayward to do Forever Autumn, and they needed a rockier voice. So they asked Justin, and he said, "Oh, why don't you ask?" And I always forget his name. The other guy from Moody Blues. Oh, doesn't matter. They
John
asked him to
Lodge?
do, yeah, exactly. They asked him to, thank you. They asked him to sing it, which he did. But Jeff was not kind of satisfied with it. So Gary said, "Why don't you ask Chris?" So I went along, and they played me the track, and Jeff explained to me what he wanted. And as I said before, I was lucky enough to be able to, because I'd sung every kind of style, I was able to interpret what Jeff wanted and sing Thunderchild, which was incredibly difficult. And Jeff was like this picky master of what he had in his mind. Unbelievable and great. I loved working with Jeff. He was really, I think we became friends over the years. I think because I worked with him on some other projects as well. And so anyway, I think I worked, I don't know, 10 hours or something on that vocal.
Oh,
He
wow.
wanted it, he wanted to feel so it felt like you were on the ocean and you were moving. So the time, it wasn't like it wasn't da 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 da. It wasn't that. It was ba ba da 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 ba 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 da da ba da. So it was like on a wave and everything like that. So that was with every line I was going through. No, a little bit this, a little bit that, and yeah, I think we worked for about 10 hours. We did have a lunch break, I'm sure, but anyway, so we worked with it. And we listened to it through, I think it was, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night or something like that. And Jeff said, yeah, yep, I'm really happy with that. What are you doing tomorrow? I said, well, I'm not doing anything, I don't think. I've got, and he said, well, can you come and double track it for me? Now, I don't know whether you know how difficult it is to double track something that's in 4/4, but it was still in 4/4, but it had the movement. And I just said, how can I? He said, oh, I'll come back. It took us 2 days to do that, 2 days to double track it. But that was the sound he heard, and that was the sound he wanted, and that was the sound we got. And it was on an album that was incredible, really, a breakthrough concept rock album with such a fantastic band. Herbie Flowers, Chris Spedding, the different drummers, and just you know, I can't remember his name, but the guy that did the keyboards, he actually built a keyboard to do all the oohs and all the wee wee sounds and all that on the record. He actually built it, and it was just a fantastic thing to be involved in, and then to get Phil in it to sing, amazing,
Yeah.
and and all the other people that sang, it was just brilliant.
It's
And of
really interesting
course,
to
we
hear
did
you
it
talk about your
live.
experience there with Jeff, because it's almost like you're describing what you did with Manfred as well, with being so picky and him having something in his head exactly how he wants it to sound,
Yeah,
and how it kind of changed and things like that. I did have a question actually I was going to ask you, because obviously you've worked with so many different people, from Alan Parsons to Gary Moore and Robin Trower, Steve Hackett, Mike Oldfield, on and on and on and on. And I was going to ask, is there a particular collaboration that challenged you the most? But it sounds like you worked with a lot of challenging people.
I think Jeff challenged me the most. I
Yes.
think. I think, and live wise as well, we had to do it live. It was very difficult to wait around for 40 minutes and then sing something that finishes in the highest note I can sing. That was challenging, really, really challenging. I used to walk around the backstage and everything looking for things to kick and jump up and down and bash, and just to get myself in the mood to do it. I think that was Jeff was the hardest taskmaster, I think. But the thing about Jeff, excuse me, the thing about Jeff was he had this whole vision of everything, not just, because he knew the book backwards. He the script and stuff for Richard Burton to do. He held it all, and he knew how it was all going to fit in. And I think that's what made him so special with what he did. Whereas Manfred was always kind of searching around for, the vibe, as I said to you
Yeah.
before. Jeff knew exactly what he wanted, and that was why he was one of the hardest people to work with. And I worked with him and his father on another project called Spartacus. 4 years or 5 years we worked on that, singing these ridiculous kind of things. And he had the same thing. It's totally vision. And with his father was writing, his father was a vaudeville actor and singer. Very clever, talented man. Lovely to meet him. And I never forget one time I had trouble singing this line. I can't remember what it was. It would be funnier if I could remember what it was. But I just couldn't fit the words in the music. And I came and I said, Jeff, I can't sing that line. And his father said, yes, you can. Okay, I said, went back in and sang it. So yeah, it was really great. I mean, Alan Parsons was wonderful to work with. I loved working with Alan, singing those fantastic songs. Lucky man I was to do that and go and sing it all around the world. It was really fantastic.
Fantastic stuff. It's incredible when we look back at your legacy, and we've talked about Blinded by the Light, and obviously the War of the Worlds was another global phenomenon. And talking about another one as well, you co-wrote "You're the Voice," and obviously went on to become another worldwide smash hit for John Farnham. But is it true that you were turned away by record companies when you went to do it yourself because they said it wasn't
Yeah.
commercial enough?
No, they said nobody wants to listen to a protest song. That was what, yeah, that was what my record company chief said to me. Yeah, nobody wants to listen to a protest song. But I'm actually happy because I was with Atlantic and it was just such a difficult process. I don't think they really believed, I don't think they really believed in the project. And so, or they wanted their own songs. They wanted me to sing their own songs. So when I came up with that one, yeah, it's not a protest song anyway. It's a, it's a, what's the word? It's like jubilation or you know, you're the voice. You are. Everybody matters. It was such a yeah, it was such a great idea, and yeah, it's kind of spanned the test of time. I mean, it's ridiculous what it's done. The song, crazy.
So how did it end up with John Farnham then for him to record it and release it?
Ah, now that's do you want the real version or do you want the I'll tell you the legend. I'll tell you the legend because that's much better than
Oh, right.
what
Okay.
um one of the other writers was a guy called Andy Kunter who is a keyboard player for Icehouse
Mhm.
and who are an Australian band. And we we really believed in that song. I mean, I've got four songs sitting in my, you know, the songs I really believe in. I've got four other ones I really believe in. I've got lots of songs, love the songs, but four I really believed in. And this one, we knew, we believed it. We knew it was going to be a hit song. We knew it. And so I was glad when they turned me down because I think Atlantic they would have buried it, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. Doug Morris, that was his name. I got a telegram from him. Sorry, but we don't think people are interested in protest songs. Anyway, yeah, so we believed in it. I did the demo, obviously. And thank goodness John took almost everything from the demo, including kind of the way I sang it, which is so nice of him to do because I'll tell you, I'll get back to another story about that. And so I did the demo. We all had cassettes of the song, and we played it to a few different people, but we were holding it for the person. So Andy was in the studio, and John was recording in another studio where Icehouse were recording in one studio and John was recording in the other. And Andy came out and making a cup of tea, and Andy, being a very garrulous kind of person, overheard John and Glenn Wheatley, his manager, saying, John, we just don't have a hit. We don't have a hit with the song. This is your coming back to life from being a childhood star. We need a hit. And Andy went, there you are. There's a hit. And he gave him the cassette. They recorded it without our permission, which you
Oh,
can't do if a song hasn't been recorded. They recorded it, and then the their record company guy called me in England and said, John Farnham wants to record You're the Voice. Is that okay? Well, I came from New Zealand, and John Farnham to me was little Johnny Farnham, who sang a song called Sadie the Cleaning Lady, which is, I'll sing you a bit. Sadie, the cleaning lady. That was all I remember of John Farnham. So I said, no, no, that's impossible. No, this is a hit song. We don't, we can't. Well, please, can they record it? They'd already recorded it, of course. Can can they record it and can we send you it? Is that okay? So I called the other guys and I said I'll speak to everybody else. So I spoke to everybody else and said, and they said, well, it's got to be out. He is a star in New Zealand and it's in Australia, and maybe he's the person to do it. And I said, well, okay, well, let's. So I called him back and said, okay, send us a cassette of it. Now, in those days, we had to twiddle our fingers and wait for it to come. There was no digital.
Yes.
Here it goes. So it came over, and of course, John sang it unbelievably well, fantastically well. And the little changes that they made, putting the bagpipes on, you know, it was a hit. We heard it. It was a hit. We knew it, and so we agreed for for John to be able to record it, and the rest is really history. It's incredible, really. Although it's never been a hit in America,
Okay. I didn't realize that.
and it was never a hit in America because his record company in America decided to remix it. Now, I don't know where you get off saying, hey, it's a hit number one all the way around the world. Hey, let's remix it. But that's what they said. And they got Bob Clearmountain, who's one of the best mixing guys in the world, to mix. But he took away the claps.
Yep.
He took that away. And he went boom, ba, doom, ba, doom, ba for 15, 20 seconds. And American people, if they listen to that, they just go whoosh, onto the next station. And it just didn't have a chance. And I'm writing all this in a book, actually. I'm in the middle of writing a book.
Ah,
And and the thing is, so it was a big hit everywhere in the world except for America. And then when he did his second album, which also had a couple of my songs on it, um, I got a call saying, we're going to put You're the Voice and give it another shot in America. So we're going to put that on the American release of the record. So I said, that's fantastic. And I remember to this day, I was lying in bed and I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up because thinking, I went, shit, do his American record company know that there's two versions of that song? And of course they didn't. So they put the same version
oh
that
no.
had failed dismally onto the John's record. And I just didn't, not being clever enough to realize that I should have said only if you, but I think they may have already done it. I don't know, but so we just keep waiting for somebody to do You're the Voice in America.
Wow, incredible story. So many incredible stories from your career, and that kind of leads us nicely to your most recent work. And let's talk about the final round then. It's what you're
Okay.
calling your last ever live album. It's a powerful reflection of basically your decades of making music, and it features your band of over 20 years, people that
Yes.
you've grown and performed with for so long together. So I'd love to
Yes.
hear more about what makes the final round such a fitting culmination of your live performances then.
Um, well, I think because the band, obviously, when we started playing together, it was based on Manfred Mann's Earth Band songs and some songs that I'd written with the guitar player and some songs I had on my own. But basically, when we played live, it was, Manfred Mann's Earth Band songs. And we changed them and built them over the time to get up to like a 2 hour, 15-minute show. And about 4 years before I decided I was going to retire from live work, um, I'm 77, nearly 78 years old, and I just woke up one morning and thought, the first time I put my guitar and my amp into a car, I was 16 years old. So I think 60 years is enough. And I just decided not to, just to stop. So anyway, so about 4 years before I decided to stop, one of the guys came to me and said, "Can we've been going back over some really early Manfred Mann's Earth Band songs that you didn't have anything to do with, but funnily enough, we recorded that we were um, doing them on the live gigs I first did with Manfred Mann's Earth Band because I hadn't made anything. Mick Rogers had left and we were promoting Nightingales and Bombers, and I hadn't done anything. But so a couple of the songs, Messin and It'll come to me in a second. Um, that we did those. So they said to me, "Would you like to do these? Can we do our own versions of these kind of proggy rock songs?" So that's what we did. We did three, and the band kind of went in those 4 years. We kind of developed more and more songs, and I just felt that we had to record what we had done. Great guitar player, fantastic bass and drums, best bass and drums I've ever played with. The other song is called Buddha, and we did our own prog rock versions of these songs. And we've since actually recorded two other prog rock songs we wrote, which will be on my last physical album that I'm working on now. So I felt, we had to record it. We had to record the band. So I recorded it over a year. Didn't tell them when I was recording because people get so nervous when you tell them you're recording. And that became the tour. It's called the Final Round, and that's what we recorded. I don't know, 10 shows or 12 shows, and I had to sift through them and see which was the best representation. And I'm pretty happy. I mean, we did very little except for we double tracked a few guitar tracks because just the way some of the venues affected the sounds. Luckily, the bass and the drums were all close in and they were closely mic'd, so nothing affected that. But the guitars, you had so much with the room and everything, so we had to double a few guitar bits and pieces to get the sound that we heard on stage. So, but very little else, very little.
And how did your bandmates take the news that you were going to stop touring then, stop being on the road? Because obviously, as you said, you'd been with them for 20 years, playing with them, and obviously the friendships built up and things like that. So how did they take the news that you decided that was enough of being on the
They
road for
never,
you?
they never spoke to me again. No,
That
that's
was
a joke. Um, we're such good friends. Whenever I talk to them now, they always say, "Oh, you miss playing," but I miss playing too, I have to say. But I have an advantage over them that I have all the tracks without me singing. So I put them in my studio where I am now. I put them in the studio, and if I really miss it that much, I can hang my guitar on, I can play and sing along, which I do very often. So no, they're good friends, and we wrote two other songs and recorded them, and they've worked out really, really well. So I think they're happy that we're still in touch and working together. And for ages I said to them, "Why don't you just get another singer? Just get another singer." And they didn't like that idea, but I think they've now come to the realization that that's what they should do because they're such a great band. As I said, the best drummer I've ever worked with in my life. He's just incredible. And the bass player together, they're just the best. And they should not be sitting at home going, "Gee, I wish we were playing." Definitely. I mean, they do play individually, but together. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to get together and then I can pop over and sing a couple of songs.
That's it, yeah. And so after 60 years of doing this and being on the road and playing live and things like that, did you have a tearful moment at the very end then when you realized this was it? You were finally capturing the end?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The last song, the last song was Questions. I always did that as the last song. The first song I did, we changed it around a lot, but over the last 4 years, I think I always started with For You because the audience, it did just me and the piano, and the audience always felt that was, I announced my retirement 2 years before, but people knew I was going to stop. Every interview I did, I said, I'm going to stop soon. So I always started with For You, which kind of got the audience together. And we always finished with Questions, which was a huge hit in Norway and in Scandinavia, much more so than England, I think. And yeah, so the last gig we did was in a club where we did our first gig.
Oh.
So yeah, so there's 21 years later, we did a gig in the same club. And it was, yeah, it wasn't a big club. So they had a TV outside. It was cold, freezing and snowing. People still standing outside, smoking cigarettes and drinking beer and watching the thing, and I got halfway through the first chorus of questions, and I just crashed completely. I had to stop and uh, and start again because I was very tearful and yeah, I managed to. We actually went back to the beginning and started the whole song again, and I
Oh,
was okay. I got it together, but it was very, very, very upsetting, and I was very, very upset. And then we went off to the bass player's place, and we had a fantastic party. He organized this incredible. It was Christmas, near Christmas. He organized this incredible mishmash of Norwegian Christmas fair and English Christmas fair. And he had organized it all. It was just incredible. And we had all partied together with our wives and girlfriends and all the close people. And yeah, we had a wonderful time. So it was a good send off.
fantastic stuff. And how can people get hold of the final round then?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I'm just going to walk over here and get a copy of it. Hang on a sec.
Absolutely,
I'll be
you do
back
that.
in a minute. Don't go away. You can edit that out, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so here it is. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, that's the final round. And it's 2 hours of music. And it's got everything that everybody would possibly want to hear, I think, plus some original songs from me. If people go to my website, I've been you can digitally get it through Cherry Red Records digital department. But I had these printed. I had 500 of these printed. And if you go to my website, I've been trying to raise money for a children's cancer station in Karlsruhe in Germany. I've had some, not myself personally, but a friend of mine had a very terrible experience, and they were just unbelievably marvelous. He had a child that was very sick, and they were unbelievably fantastic with him. And he's been working with them, and I decided that I print some of these and I give them away. If people make a donation, it's something that I did every Christmas. I gave away whatever records. I had a Christmas record, and I used to give them away at the gigs for the local charities, and it worked really well. We raised a lot of money over 2 years, and I've raised 5,000 euros so far. So if people go to the website, they can donate as much or as little as they want, and they will be sent a record, signed copy. So if
Wow.
people want a signed copy, that's how they do it.
I'll be
And
heading straight to your website after this, Chris.
and yeah, so that's what I've been doing with it. That was the whole reason for printing some CDs, was to raise some money for this kids charity, because I mean there's so many charities you know, but it was something personal with me and my friend, and we yeah, together we felt it was a good idea to do it. And so, you know, people can donate, you know, €2. I don't doesn't matter, but they will be sent a copy. And we have somebody sending the copies out. And like I said, it's to raise money for the Karlsruhe Kids Cancer Station.
Fantastic cause. Well done, Chris. I applaud you for that. That's brilliant. And just to finish off, then you've kind of teased us with a couple of things. You said you're writing a book and you're recording stuff as well. So let us know how's that going? What are you up to with it, with them kind of things?
Well, I've just had such an incredible life
Yes.
as a musician, and been in such incredible situations that, I mean, everybody's got stories, but, I've been in with so many different groups of people playing in so many different situations and having some incredible successes and some incredible failures. And I thought it would be nice to just to write all those things down, and so I'm doing that. I'm at the taking note stage, wherever I've got a pad and I just write down the ideas, and then I'm going to just talk them into some AI device that will print them out for me and tell me where to put a comma, and and we'll see what happens with that. But I'm halfway through making a very eclectic record, nothing to do with anything I've done before, just all sorts of ideas and songs. Just on the total aside, I've been working with my wife, who I discovered was a really great lyricist. We've been working on a musical, and we finished it. We wrote the script and we finished it. 24 new songs. At the moment, it's called "Do It for Love," and we did put it on one time before the everything got closed down in March, whatever year that was.
2020, yeah.
So we've seen it. We know that it works, and it's a young people's kind of, it's a family thing, bit of mystery, bit of this, bit of that. But that's what I've been doing for all this time. Apart from doing my live record, I've been producing these 24 tracks for the different singers in the musical. So I've been doing that, and while that happened, while my kids it got really, really got go back to my father for one second. My father was a musical freak. He loved musicals, and he was always singing bits from musicals and this is that, and he always played them. And I just loved, the early Gilbert and Sullivan and all that kind of stuff. He loved that.
Yeah.
And so I've always wanted to. So when you write a musical, you write for the art, you write for this the person who's playing the part. You write for whether it's the bad guy, the good guy, the woman, or the older person, or whatever it is in your play. Each character has a song, and so it just kind of loosened my writing ability totally. I now was not writing, is it got a chorus? Is it this or no? I had a place in the musical. I knew what it was. I knew what they wanted to say. I knew what kind of character they were. And it just seemed I could write them just like that. They just flew out because it was a whole different thing. And during that time, some other songs flew out as well. And not anything that you could link up and say, hey, that's Chris Thompson or anything. And that's what I'm working on. I'm working on those songs that flew out. Yeah.
Incredible stuff. So although you may be coming off the road, you're certainly not slowing down by the sounds of things. You've got so much going
I've
on.
got less time. I seem to have no time to do anything anymore. But yeah, I'm enjoying it, as you can tell, I'm sure. I'm enjoying it very, very much, and having a great time.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you for this hour or so, and thank you so much for your time, and best of luck with everything you've got coming on, coming forward on your plate, because it sounds like you've got an awful lot going on.
Yeah, well, thanks, Paul. It's been a pleasure.